This is our room. It's not quite what you're used to, but
it's fine, Padme assured him with a smile as they stood at the entrance to their home,
she supposed.
It was not within the temple as she expected it to be when Anakin first mentioned it to her. Rather, they along with many of the younger Jedi and their caretakers were given rooms inside a dreadnought-class heavy cruiser parked in the temple's makeshift landing area. Too much of the Jedi's new home was in a poor state and would take time to repair, to make it properly livable. The adults could suffer it, but children and pregnant women had no business sleeping in moss-covered rooms with holes in the floor. Anakin's words, not hers. Though, even the dreadnought had seen better days. Its outer hull showcased an impressive collection of scrapes and blaster burn marks of every shape and size imaginable. The inside frequently let out a strange assortment of humming and whirring noises seemingly from everywhere at once without rhyme or reason. Pipes and wiring stuck out from exposed hallway walls. Yes, it was a warship, all right. The kind of warship the pristine propaganda pieces the holonet wouldn't want you to see. Padme didn't find it unappealing. If anything, the lived-in feeling permeating through the spacecraft made it feel more accommodating. Their own room was outfitted with the necessities one might expect. A bed big enough for two, a computer built into the wall allowing them to speak to people across the entire temple or pick up holonet news. 2 closets. A surprisingly spacious bathroom with a shower. And a baby crib in the corner? It was the first thing she touched, inspecting it with a disbelieving look on her face. Yeah, that's more or less what I must have looked when I saw it too. Anakin stood to her right. Apparently, some of General Kota's troops got close and busy during the war. So, they needed stuff like this to help out the parents. Sounds like a serious breach in protocol. Guess so, although, he smiled slyly at her. Who are we to talk? They laughed for a bit, fingers inevitably interlocking even as silence fell. In silence, they observed the crib, both of them trying to hold on to the feeling of levity. Padme sent a sideways look to her husband's direction, and though he put a brave face, the wear and tear was obvious. His skin was paler than usual, his lips tense and eyelids hanging. She very much doubted he got any sleep to Utapau or after it. How could he, between fighting General Grievous, barely escaping with Obi-Wan and spending hours helping whoever he could across the temple? To say nothing of what must have been going through his mind after Palpatine's true intentions made themselves clear. She wouldn't ask him about that, not yet. Instead, Padme guided Anakin to their bed and he followed without protest. Now wasn't the time for words but for resting and companionship. The empty hallways of this particular temple section were a welcome sight for Obi-Wan's tired eyes. So much had happened, so much was still happening that it became almost shocking to find someplace within the old structure far removed from anything. From where he was, one couldn't hear the sounds of ships endlessly landing outside or the madness of hundreds of individuals trying to hastily establish some order in a galaxy teetering closer to chaos than he'd ever known it to before. Since before he, Anakin, and Master Kota even landed on the world only tentatively known as Gormo, they were on the move without rest. First, picking up any and all Jedi they could find, sending messages and holo communications throughout Jedi-exclusive channels to any survivors they could. Master Yoda was among the first they'd rescued but certainly not the last. Arriving at their new home brought no rest or respite. Countless Jedi arriving with the core temple group alone were wounded, some on the brink of death, and many were added to their ranks as survivors from across the front lines began to arrive. It was a good thing this was not the only planet the Jedi had relocated to, otherwise, the surge of new arrivals would have most assuredly overwhelmed them. And so, from the evening all the way to the current early morning of this world's cycle, Obi-Wan kept himself busy by helping in any way he could. Taking wounded Jedi to their makeshift medical center, organizing equipment placement until the duty of overseeing the children passed on to him and several other masters and knights. This was the most taxing task of all. To look upon the faces of so many younglings, afraid and cast out from their home, declared criminals throughout the galaxy for simply being themselves. It only became worse when Padawan learners who escaped without the masters arrived. The wounded were seen to, but the ones still able-bodied could do nothing but join their peers in sullen silence. The look of a student who'd lost his teacher was something Obi-Wan understood all too well. He held his brave face for as long as possible, becoming the rock for the next generations to the best of his ability. But even with the endless gifts of the Force, Obi-Wan was only human, and when a tired but determined Halagad Ventor came to relieve him of duty, Obi-Wan tried not to look too relieved. Obi-Wan needed to isolate himself, needed time to consider everything, no matter how much it hurt, and it very much did. The Jedi Order was very nearly eradicated. A group of exemplary men and women from across the entire galaxy, warriors, and negotiations, scholars, and scientists all nearly snuffed out. And so many already were. For every Master Yoda or Shakti or Halagad, there was a Quinlan Vo, a Kit Fisto, or a Mace Windu. Someone lost so far behind enemy lines there was nothing they could do for them. Or dead already. So many of his friends he'd never see again. So many remarkable individuals he would never get a chance to meet. Butchered by the very troops they'd come to trust. He had very nearly lost Anakin as well. Selfish as it sounded, and he was all too aware it did, that hurt more than anything else. His apprentice, his brother, had done more than his fair share of dangerous gambits that threatened to send Obi-Wan to an early grave. But this time felt different. Watching him, the finest pilot in the Order, spiral out of control just as the clones started coming for them. With a sigh, Obi-Wan stopped and tried to calm himself. It was during this tiring mental recount of the past few hours that Obi-Wan realized he'd become a bit too lost in thought. Without even knowing where it was, he'd reached the meager fountain room of the temple. Meager only being a relative word to describe it. For while this place was nothing next to the scale of Coruscant, the Force was strong here regardless. No, stronger, and purer. For this world, secure deep within the unknown pathways of the galaxy, was raw and untamed. The floor itself was entirely made of healthy, green grass from which grew hundreds of plants of dazzling colors. Were it not for the untouched fountain still gushing clear water out, one would think nature had reclaimed this place entirely. Obi-Wan entered it after removing his boots and gingerly walked upon the surface, making sure not to disturb too much of what grew there. Not because of any danger, the Force assured him there was none. It just seemed a waste to ruin something so exemplifying of life itself. The grass was soft and almost ticklish, the air was clear and invigorating. Without a moment's hesitation, he gently sat before the fountain and let himself reach out to this place through the Force. The effect was immediate and liberating. Obi-Wan exhaled loudly and sat there for a while, simply letting himself breathe for the first in what felt like years. It was not too dissimilar to placing oneself under the cool, invigorating current of a waterfall. He could almost feel the currents of the Force wipe away the grime and dirt from his person, relaxing his tired aging muscles and easing the many burdens still left for him to carry. Sitting there, Obi-Wan simply immersed himself in this state, mind completely devoid of any thought. Eventually, he did think again about the current situation. The home taken away from them, the betrayals orchestrated by the Sith and all the friends lost already or nearly so. He didn't linger on them. As it must have done before when it guiding him there, the Force presented a solution through its welcoming currents and gently nudged him to make use of it. It was the same one he'd performed when Qui-Gon's death overwhelmed him one day, back when Anakin was still in the early weeks of his training. With that, Obi-Wan Kenobi took a single deep breath. In it, he focused all of his pains and regrets, the longing for things and people he would likely never see again, and with a single exhale, let these things flow out him into the waterfall. After completing this final farewell to Mace, Kit, Quinlan, and the others who he knew and would sadly never meet, Obi-Wan returned to a state without thought again. He would spend many hours in this state, though he wouldn't become aware of this fact until his communication device beeped from his belt. Opening his now rested eyes, Obi-Wan saw it was the afternoon, judging by the orange tint to the sun's rays peeking through the wall cracks. So much time passed, he wondered the fact no one had called him so long a sign of things improving. And being called then wasn't a sign of them worsening. This is Obi-Wan. He detached the device from his belt and from its tiny, circular projector, sprang to life a hand-sized image of his former student. Anakin? Has something happened? Palpatine's holding an emergency session of the Senate, though looking well rested too, there was an understandable grim edge to his voice. We're calling all of the masters to hear it. I'll be there shortly. Within a few minutes, Obi-Wan had put his boots back on and exited the temple swiftly enough. One of the advantages to having so many cracks and holes everywhere leading to the outside was no shortage of shortcuts. The mess of activity seemed to calm itself in the intervening hours of his absence. Ships no longer came in, The number of people walking or running about had decreased significantly, and a quick check of the larger surroundings through the Force indicated a noticeable drop in fear and anxiety amongst those gathered. All except the group within the dreadnought. He sensed several high-ranking Jedi there: Anakin, Master Yoda, Master M, Master T, and even Padme. No doubt her input as a senator. Ex-senator would be of great value for whatever lie Sidious intended to spout. And lie he did. Before Obi-Wan even entered the command room of Master Kota's vessel, Sidious' booming voice could be heard through the closed doors. These Jedi murderers wish to kill me. To remove me from power so as to grow their own. But their assassination attempt could not kill me, nor could it kill my integrity. My resolve. These traitors will be hunted down, rooted out wherever they choose to hide, and they will be brought to justice. All collaborators will suffer the same fate. Those who protect the enemy are the enemy. Now is the time. Now we will strike back. Now we will destroy the destroyers. Death to the enemies of democracy. No one paid Obi-Wan any mind as he slid inside and took a quick glance about the room. Master Yoda was made of stone for all the emotion he showed. Master Tm and Master Kota looked grim, though the Dark Woman even more so. Master Shark T appeared more saddened by this worsening turn of events. Anakin did his best to calm himself, no doubt aided by the presence of Padme and the children. But the way his mechanical fist clenched left little room for interpreting what he thought. The deafening roar of the Senate body brought Obi-Wan's attention back to the session. Representatives of countless worlds cheered as though Palpatine was the champion of some blood sports arena. A conquering hero vanquishing their true enemies. The fact they believed this, even as the one responsible for their woes and plights these received their thanks and love, saddened Obi-Wan profoundly. But take heart, my friends. Palpatine silenced the Senate instantly. For though we have suffered much in these trying times, and many enemies still remain for us to defeat, the Separatists no longer number themselves among them. A chorus of shouts and talk amongst the representatives nearly erupted, but Palpatine silenced it with a single raised hand. Before the Separatist attack on Coruscant, I was approached by a man who shall join us soon, though you know him well enough. A man who, despite playing an integral role in the Separatist movement, has ever been a man of conviction. A man of integrity, the only man of integrity in what would soon be revealed as little more than a cabal of monstrous, ruthless, alien scum. Count Dooku of Sereno. A collective gasp emerged from the Senate body as the figure of Dooku sprang to life right next to Palpatine. As ever, the Count seemed the definition of regal. Clad in the finest of attires, back held high in a way only an aristocrat could accomplish. Yet, there was something different there, a particular animal-like fierceness in his eyes. Casting a glance around the room, a collective grim atmosphere took all of the assembled Jedi save for Obi-Wan. Even Master Yoda numbered among them. I was not the only one to suffer an assassination attempt by those who I thought were my allies. As Count Dooku can attest for himself, Grievous and his ilk had made a move against him as well, to take the Separatist movement for their own purposes and remove the one man who could have held enough sway to stop their increasing barbarism. Such as the attack on Coruscant, Dooku's deep, immaculate voice joined Palpatine's. Though we have been enemies these past few years, this senseless butchery of the heart of the Republic was something I would never stand for. Grievous and his allies amongst the other Separatist leaders knew this to be true and attempted to kill me. With nowhere else to turn, I came to the one man I thought was worthy of my trust and my loyalty, Supreme Chancellor Palpatine. The murmuring amongst the senators was allowed this time. Many seemed skeptical, and yet many more were intrigued by this turn of events. Always it came down to Palpatine. If their Supreme Chancellor was willing to take a chance on this, then why should they not? Palpatine seemed to sense this, for the smile visible past his shadowed face was knowing and more than a little serpentine. I understand your doubts, my friends. But were it not for the efforts of Count Dooku last night, it is without question I would not be alive here to reveal Jedi treachery. At that moment, came the worst thing so far. An audio and visual recording of the so-called assassination attempt, and even for this, Obi-Wan could not steel himself. For it showed a battle between Mace and Dooku. Palpatine sat behind them, screaming in fear of treachery and murder. Dooku, the savior, coming to his aid, and Mace, the cold Jedi butcher. The footage became scrambled as the duel began in earnest, no doubt Sidious's body superimposed on Dooku's, yet who would know the difference? Unless you were a Jedi, You couldn't possibly understand the intricacies of lightsaber dueling. And so, like the enamored masses that they were, the assembled Senate took it all in without thought or consideration. Their hero worship of Palpatine so all-consuming the vast majority of them clapped when Dooku struck Mace down. The Jedi discovered my negotiations with Count Dooku. They wished to turn a complete and unconditional separatist surrender into evidence of my own collaboration with enemies of the Republic. Palpatine's angered bark seemed to almost visible strike the senators. So low have they fallen, they would have subjected your worlds to continued destruction, all for the sake of preserving their own power. And such destruction will not continue. Dooku joined his master, capturing the attention of the entire assembly. Before the Chancellor even began his address to you, I had already inputted the command codes that have rendered the entire droid army useless. The war is already over.
Just so.
Though the Jedi rebellion will continue, the great bloody conflict which has spanned our fair galaxy is over. The separatist movement has been utterly defeated and our republic still stands, united and free. The Senate exploded in even grander fashion than before. It was deafening just listening to a holonet projection, to be there amongst them. Even if someone had doubts of this entire charade, the force of the current situation alone would have forced them into silence.
Or compliance.
Here it comes, Padme said numbly, a look of horrible understanding across her face. Before anyone could ask, Palpatine spoke again. Never again will we be divided. Never again will sector turn against sector, planet against planet, sibling against sibling. We are one nation, indivisible. To ensure that we will always stand together, that we will always speak with a single voice and act with a single hand, the Republic must change. We must evolve. We must grow. We have become an empire in fact, let us become an empire in name as well. We are the first galactic empire. The Senate fell further into madness. We are an empire, Palpatine went on, that will continue to be ruled by this august body. We are an empire that will never return to the political maneuvering and corruption that has wounded us so deeply. We are an empire that will be directed by a single sovereign, chosen for life. We are an empire ruled by the majority. An empire ruled by a new constitution. An empire of laws, not of politicians. An empire devoted to the preservation of a just society. Of a safe and secure society. We are an empire that will stand 10,000 years. The Senate degenerated into frothing animals. As for those watching on the dreadnought, it was as silent as the grave. We can't let them get away with this, as Obi-Wan expected. It was Anakin who eventually broke the silence hovering over them even as the shameless hero worship of Palpatine continued. Thankfully, Master Shakti turned it off. None of them could bear to watch more. His former student looked about the room, waiting to see who would agree or disagree with him. Obi-Wan revealed nothing, opting to simply stand aside for the moment. He was always one to listen to others first, to gain insights beyond his own on an issue where group decision-making was paramount. Skywalker is correct, Master Kota spoke next, arms crossed and expression one of grim determination. We must strike against the Sith now, while there's still time. They know their plan to wipe most of us out in one masterstroke was less than successful. In a month, no, even as little as a week, they could reinforce their positions beyond our ability to circumvent. Either that or they crawl into some deep, dark places from which they can simply exert their power from afar. The Dark Woman backed him up, face and body language impossible to ascertain thanks to her heavy cloak and robes. Places we won't be able to find them in. Not like they've lacked time to pick them out. Destroying the Sith, of tantamount importance it is, Master Yoda emphasized the point, as he was so fond of doing, with a strong jab of his cane across the Durasteel floor. So long as even a single Jedi remains, resist the dark side we must. We do have the separatist leadership, the secretive Masterton reminded them. From them, we are no doubt to glean a great many things concerning the enemy. Enough perhaps, to give us a window of opportunity, should we decide to strike. Anakin seemed calmed by this joint call to action. Obi-Wan could understand why. Yet he still said nothing, stroking his beard and almost meditatively pressing his back against the nearest wall, letting himself feel for the currents of the Force. As he did so, all of his attention was focused on a particular individual, the only one not a Jedi but of a different, crucial pedigree altogether. Defeating the Sith is important, yes, Padme Amidala spoke up with a nearly suppressed suffering sigh. But from the look on Anakin's face, her follow-up to the statement wouldn't be what he'd expect to hear. But I ask you, Masters of the Jedi Order, what do you think will happen to the government with Palpatine and Dooku dead?
Chaos.
Master Shark T said the word without thinking it, momentarily getting the attention of the rest of the room.
Chaos and anarchy, perhaps at a scale greater than the Clone Wars.
Exactly, Padme nodded. Throughout this past decade alone, never mind all that they've done through the past millennia, the Sith have completely and utterly consolidated every single shred of power throughout the galaxy.
The government and Sith aren't separate, the Sith are the government, particularly Palpatine.
Despite what he's done to you, to the rest of the galaxy, he is a hero beyond heroes.
Even bigger than you or Obi-Wan, Anakin. What he's done tonight will only make this sentiment stronger.
If they're both killed, the blow to the galaxy will be devastating. Any semblance of a greater, galactic community will fall. It will be sector versus sector, planet against planet, just the way Palpatine said.
But if we don't move against them, it'll be tyranny, Anakin said. They'll tighten their grip on the galaxy, there's no telling what kind of monstrous things they'll do to keep it. Particularly now, make no mistake my friends, Master Tom spoke next.
Sentiment against those of the separatist movement is grave and powerful. There will be many calls for blood before anyone is satiated. Precisely the kind of remorseless butchery the Sith's power will increase from.
Is that it then? Master Kota asked, incredulous. Chaos or tyranny, are these the only avenues available to us? Maybe not. We might have a third option available to us. Padme cast a nervous glance around the room. But you're not going to like it. Dooku, Obi-Wan spoke up for the first time since arriving there, the name coming out of his mouth automatically. It concerns Dooku, doesn't it? You wish to replace Sidious with him. A collective shock reverberated throughout the room, though some did a far better job of concealing it than others. Masters Yoda, Timon the Dark Woman took the proclamation in more or less stride. Masters Kota, Shark T, and particularly Anakin looked as though someone had just stolen their lightsabers away. Padme did not share the sentiment. If anything, Obi-Wan found the Force around her incredibly attuned. No doubt the pregnancy heightened her connection to the multifaceted streams of energy binding their humble universe together. In fact, his own perceptions seemed most in tune with hers out of the entire group. It's an opportunity given to us by Palpatine, Padme began explaining, pointedly avoiding the scandalous look from her husband. Why else parade him during the Senate hearing this way? Why else place him at his right side? Why else concoct this story of Dooku being some poor victim of treachery who happened to save Palpatine from his? It's a transparent move of positioning Dooku as an equal, or at the very least, someone the Senate and galaxy at large have to take notice of. It's been going on longer than you think, Master Tom said. Since the beginning of the war, attempts at vilifying nearly every person within the separatist leadership has been an ongoing, escalating, and clear smear campaign. The one to emerge the most unscathed from it was always Dooku. If Grievous was a butcher, Dooku was a mistaken but admirable man. If Newt Gunray or Poggle the Lesser were greedy or cowardly, Dooku was an exemplar. But how does trading one Sith Emperor for another change anything? Shark T inquired. I believe she means to turn him into our ally, Obi-Wan explained with a knowing smile. Placing a redeemed Dooku on the throne of Emperor. You can't be serious, Anakin said, nostrils flared in self-control, breathing more than pushed to its utter limits. He looked at Obi-Wan, then his wife and back again. After everything he's done, all the Jedi he's twisted and murdered, and you want to give him another chance? In a perfect galaxy, Dooku would be getting justice for his numerous crimes. Yes, Obi-Wan replied calmly. But we are not in such a place. We know full well from the history of past Sith rulerships what Sidious will look like, nor is there a lack of historical proof to show how bloody brother versus brother on a single planet can be. Never mind the wider spanning galaxy. A Dooku removed from the dark side but in a place of power could solve both issues. Holding some semblance of order without egotism and revenge-fueled slaughter to support it. A redeemed Dooku would also be a potent ally for us, Master Tom said with a bit more energy to his voice. He is privy to many secrets of the Sith. Were he to focus his efforts on dismantling the lies and machinations brought forth from within while we work outside, there could be a return to proper democracy. A return without the need for a civil war that would be a certainty against a Sidious-led empire. Who can even succeed in such a task? Master Kota inquired. You, Master Yoda. No, I do not think so, the Grand Master said, head bowed in heavy concentration since the plan was proposed. The tiny green Jedi who'd been a kindly grandfather figure to them all looked even more aged than before, and an invisible, hulking burden weighed him down in his seat. Once before, I attempted to return my old Padawan to the Jedi, yet the intervention of young Obi-Wan and Anakin prevented its success. It did. And Dooku accepts betrayal from no one. Not since Lorian Nod. Lorian Nod? Master Shark T asked. A friend of Dooku's he was, a very good friend. Closer than brothers they were, but Dooku advanced further, a prodigy he was, and Lorian became envious. Stole a holocron containing many dark secrets. Lorian did worse. When Dooku attempted to right his wrong, Lorian betrayed him. Claimed Dooku was the thief, and the two came to blows. Lorian was cast out from the Order, and Dooku never trusted anyone again, not even I. I don't quite believe that is the case, Master, Obi-Wan said, as ever, letting the stronger presence of the Force guide him. Despite what you've told me of their past misgivings with one another, Dooku and Qui-Gon respected each other deeply. I even sensed true remorse, even sadness, in the Count's voice when we met on Geonosis and he spoke of wanting Qui-Gon's help. Some truth you speak. Indeed, Dooku and Master Qui-Gon, like fire and ice they were. Many times, we of the Council wondered if it was wise to pair them, yet a wise decision it was indeed. The happiest days I remember of my old Padawan were of Qui-Gon's apprenticeship. A nice sentiment, Master Yoda, the Dark Woman coldly said. But what does it gain us? Are we to use Dooku's lingering sentimentality to turn him over to our side? This is precisely what I will try, Obi-Wan answered her. Though it will be dangerous, I believe there is an opportunity to appeal to what is left of Dooku's better nature. I am the only thing he has left of Qui-Gon. The only relationship with a friend he has not blemished as directly as he has done for the rest of us. Why, I am practically the closest he will come to having a grandson. Didn't stop him from trying to kill you, on Geonosis or over Coruscant, and what do you mean you'll do it? Anakin asked, frustration now apparent in his voice. Exactly what I said. Obi-Wan remained perfectly at ease. Call me foolish or idealistic if any of you wish, by all means, I cannot blame you for thinking so. However, the Force is telling me something. It has been since I've had the time to recenter myself from these dark days befalling us. I am trusting it and my own instincts, and they both say this is the path to take. I am already committed to it. It is easy to think of Dooku as nothing but a villain. Master M spoke again, this time addressing the mouth-agape Anakin across the room. Believe me, young one, I and Quinlan have seen more than enough proof with our own eyes to burn away any idea Dooku ever held principles or possessed a shred of integrity. However, he did. For I was there when he and many others of the Lost 20 quit the Jedi. I was present when the news came that an entire culture was very nearly wiped out by Dooku and his fellow Jedi. Galidran was a painful disgrace and one of the chief reasons Dooku left the Jedi. A heartless man would walk away from that battle with nary a worry. Dooku most certainly did no such thing. He was always pompous and arrogant. The Dark Woman followed Master M up. However, his dedication to the Order was obvious back then. If he was the only man standing between a city of innocents and an army itching to carve them to pieces, he'd stay and fight to the end. If we go through with this, Master T crossed her arms, looking at Obi-Wan. How do you intend to go about this? Complete honesty. If Dooku always searches for treason, I will give him none. I will be a transparent figure, speak my mind or my heart, and hide nothing from him. Only then will I have a chance to turn him back from the dark side. And if it doesn't work? Then I will, of course, defend myself. If it is a lost cause, then I will strike him down and bear the burden of responsibility for whatever comes next from it. All right, Anakin said, voice heavy but considerably more relaxed. He'd spent the past few minutes breathing in and out, calming himself by a substantial margin. When are we leaving? This time, Obi-Wan did pause. Because from all the insights the Force gave him, this was one he knew would be the hardest for again to bear. You're not coming with me? What? You're needed elsewhere, Anakin. There is another, far greater adversary we must deal with if this plan is to succeed. Right, Obi-Wan is. Master Yoda banged his cane once again. Darth Sidious, the Master of the Sith, must fall. No matter what, his reign must be short-lived. Yet alone, I cannot win against him. Anakin looked between the two of them, the Jedi he trusted above all others, and the meaning behind their words dawned on him with brutal clarity. Yet, he wasn't one to give up so easily. Obi-Wan, he'll kill you if I am not there. And destroy me, Sidious will, if you are not there, young one. Master, Anakin gulped, breathing heavy. Padme placed an arm around his shoulders and gripped his mechanical one tightly. You're the most powerful Jedi alive. Strong I am, yes. But Sidious. A different breed he is, not the Sith of old who I trained my whole life to fight. Something different, darker. Something requiring the skills of one unlike myself, one most gifted in the Force. Alone, victory I cannot achieve. And so Anakin stood, silent and with closed eyes, drawing on every bit of strength he had. Obi-Wan sympathized with him entirely. He too wished for Anakin to come with him, but the time for him to meet his destiny was near. Anakin had to face the true face of the Sith with Master Yoda, and not with him. It was reasoning that mostly quelled Obi-Wan's own hidden doubts. His worries about them going off on the most dangerous missions of their entire Jedi careers apart and not together. Such was the hand dealt with them, however. And with each calming breath Anakin took, his old student came to realize it as well. Even if neither he nor Obi-Wan liked it. Half an hour later, Anakin watched the setting sun from the landing platform. Arms crossed, body held straight and thoughts trying not to wander to the dark places. Easier said than done, even with Padme by his side. Once their course was set, the rest of the meeting passed quickly. Master Yoda and he would return to Coruscant using an untraceable militia ship and confront Sidious. Obi-Wan, who'd gleaned Dooku's most probable location from a very willing Newt Gunray, would head to Mustafar. Apparently, it was a secret fortress built to house the Separatist leadership once the war was done. It also held a transmitter capable of turning off all of their troops with a few button presses. No one else but the three of them would go. Masters and Knights offered it, but they were shot down. The Jedi had already lost too many of their best, and if this mission went awry, it would become an even more grievous wound for the Order. It was funny, so many times Anakin felt like the Jedi wasted too much time with deliberation. Now that they were acting in possibly the highest stakes gambit way he'd ever seen, all he wanted to do was sit down and talk. He really didn't want to leave Obi-Wan alone with Dooku. Last time when they were together the Count very nearly smashed his head into a durasteel wall if Anakin hadn't caught him in time. Who was going to cover for him now? And yet the alternative was just as painful for similar and altogether different reasons. Leaving Master Yoda alone to deal with Sidious left a bitter taste in his mouth too. Master Windu was one of the finest swordsmen in the Order, in some ways even superior to the Grand Master himself, and fell regardless. Either of them dying was unacceptable for him, but he couldn't be in two places at once. Nor could anyone else take his position. The three of them were the best fighters left in the Order, bar none. But the most frightening aspect of all was one thing he didn't even dare think about. That was what Padme had the courage to do for him. "You're afraid of facing him, aren't you?" she said gently, as though reading his mind. Yes. How could he not be? Even after everything he'd done, all the pain, death, and misery he'd orchestrated to elevate himself, Sidious was still Palpatine. The same man who was a kindly uncle to Anakin for years. Someone he trusted more than anyone else, even his teacher, and in some regards his wife. No matter how many times he told himself it was all a lie, a farce to stifle his growth or ensnare him to the dark side, Anakin struggled to face the fact he would have to kill this man. "Just remember you're not alone." Padme turned to face him, stroking his hair with one hand while the other guided his own to the twins. "No matter how bad things get, you'll always have us to help you." Pressing his forehead to hers, Anakin closed off all perceptions of the Force save for the three of them. The invigorating, purifying energy of his family instantaneously banished all doubts and fears from his mind. The potency of this was remarkably strong last time it occurred, and this time even more so. Through his wife's stomach, he could feel a pair of strong, healthy hands gently touch the same place he did, and it was the most beautiful sensation he'd ever felt. So remarkable was it that even when Anakin pulled away as the ship getting Yoda and him back to Coruscant landed and the couple were no longer alone, it didn't change at all. "Once this is over, we'll stop having to say goodbye like this." She smiled. "I can't wait." "Ready to go, yes?" Master Yoda said, cane rhythmically thumping against a stone and a playful grin on his face as he walked toward them. Obi-Wan walked next to him. "Yes, Master, ready as I'll ever be." "Promise to reach the team's high standards."
"I do."
Anakin couldn't help but laugh.
"I've no doubt of that."
"I'll endeavor to do the same, even if I must work for two." "Yeah." His good mood cooled a bit as he looked at Obi-Wan. Briefly, he recalled all their times together. The good, the bad, the hilarious. It was as endearing as it was heart-wrenching. Now that they were parting, he didn't even know what to say. "Master, I have made me very proud," Obi-Wan said, smiling with that characteristic warmth of his, placing a friendly hand on Anakin's shoulder. "Always have, and always will. No matter what happens in these coming hours, I want you to know it was a privilege to have met you." A lump formed in Anakin's throat. "You too, Obi-Wan. I wouldn't be even a tenth of the man I am today, without you. I'm just sorry I wasn't always grateful to you."
"What's past is past. All that matters is what we do here, today.
I have faith you will rise to the occasion, as you always do." He accepted the praise with a smile and nod. "May the Force be with you, Master." Obi-Wan smiled wider. "May the Force be with you as well, old friend." "And in the event of my untimely passing, the leadership of the Emperor along with all powers associated with such position shall pass over to Count Dooku of Sereno."
"Is that everything, Your Highness?"
"Almost, Ameda. I shall be entertaining guests this evening. Ensure that the Senate building is quite vacant. I wish no interruptions for what is to transpire. As always, your will is my command." With a bow, Representative Ameda left the Emperor's suite, taking the pair of Red Guard with him and leaving Emperor Sidious alone. From the ceremonial office for official meetings, the ruler of Coruscant surveyed the capital world of his new galactic order and he was most pleased. All of it was his. Every building visible and beyond, every vehicle making its way through the never-ending traffic cycles and every living creature on the surface down the lowest levels. Even the artificial weather enhancing the sunset glistening the world in vibrant oranges was his to do with as he saw fit. Oh, it had been his for a very long time already, but now it was in an even more official capacity. The Republic was dead, the Empire was born a mere 2 hours past. He declared its lifelong leader. The final meager shackles were removed at last and the grand design of the Sith was at long last realized. 1,000 years of plotting, subversion of order and justice wherever it existed had led to this moment. As the greatest of the line, it was fitting that Darth Sidious should see the seeds of Bane's labors finally spring to life. Though his elation was not quite so grand before the speech to the Senate. In truth, a red-dark mood was upon him for most of the day. The Jedi Order, who should have been annihilated or brought to its very edge, was vilified, yes, but alive in greater numbers. Scurrying about in their secret worlds and ancient hyperspace paths and waiting for their moment to strike. Not unlike what the Sith had done to them. How ironic. As the Senate bowed their heads and slobbered on the floor as the beaten, indoctrinated hounds that they were, Sidious' mood improved considerably. Standing in their midst, reaching out into their fear, their anger, and their madness, Sidious let all of their darkest inclinations laid bare for the galaxy to see invigorate him. It was almost as satisfying as feasting on the pain and death throughout the Jedi Temple. Yet the primary reason he now sat in his former Chancellor office, hands resting upon the chair arms and back pressed against the comfortable cushion, came from the Force itself. Ever since Skywalker returned to Coruscant, his renewed presence in the Force had done something to the children growing within Senator Amidala. Theirs was a connection unlike any he had seen before, and such was its strength. Sidious lost the ability to influence Skywalker's subconscious thoughts. However, this was but the start. For as he attempted to perceive the future, his clarity was diminished as well, particularly in regards to the burgeoning Skywalker family. It was, for this reason, he could not fathom the full currents of the future, could not properly prevent Amidala's flight from Coruscant, or complete the long gestating corruption of her husband. For a time, this displeased him as well. Losing Skywalker, one so ripe with potential within the dark side, so self-aggrandizing and simultaneously weak to slightest of human affection, was the perfect apprentice. Kenobi, always Kenobi, brought true calm to the young man since the first time Sidious met him over a decade ago and rendered plans spanning the same time span all for naught. Then the children of Skywalker escaped, more apprentices lost to him. Not all failures were absolute, and the flight of the Skywalker family was no exception. With their troublesome interference to the dark side far, far away, Sidious could once again perceive the tangles of possibility, and this time they led to a most pleasing vision of the near future. Within but a short span of hours, after night falls on Coruscant and the rest of the galaxy remains completely unaware, as the useless masses always are, two great battles will happen. One here, and one on the faraway world of Mustafar. Kenobi will engage Tyrannus in the Outer Rim. The student of Qui-Gon Jinn facing Jinn's own fallen master. Dooku was already made aware of this in a final conversation following the Senate hearing. One in which Sidious instructed him to let the Jedi come to him and deal with them as he saw fit. They needed to thin the herd. Though truthfully, the outcome is of little consequence no matter who prevailed. If Tyrannus succeeds, then he will have proven himself useful enough for Sidious to forgive his foolishness this morning. If not, then the Jedi will serve the Sith's purposes well again, allowing Sidious to spin a great tale of Jedi retribution and of Count Dooku's valiant last stand to prevent the treacherous Order from taking command of deactivated separatist armies. The true battle will unfold inside the Senate building, between Sidious, Yoda, and Skywalker, the only beings left in the galaxy who might prove troublesome enough for Sidious to begrudgingly call them threats. His supremacy over them was assured, for as he saw the battle in his mind's eye, a smile of utmost contentment spread across his face and did not leave it since. Yoda lied on the ground, his robes were charred and body unmoving. Sidious, victorious, strong, and laughing approaching upon him with yet more Sith lightning. And between them? Skywalker, battered, bruised, and clinging to what little power he has left. Uselessly defending himself and his precious Grand Master with but one remaining hand. His eyes first clouded by despair, then reignited by anger and finally, pure hatred. The gaze of the dark side. It was the final part of the vision but it was all the proof the Emperor needed to understand. Skywalker's fall was not averted, merely postponed. Though the vision did not detail further events, Sidious saw little reason to gaze beyond. The future was certain. The boy would, when pressed against a wall, lash out with hatred. Sidious will defeat him regardless. His last spurt of anger was no threat to a man who personified the dark side. Once he was properly cowed into submission, he would reveal all of the Jedi's secrets, in so doing dooming the Order at long last. None would be spared save for Skywalker's own children. Not even Anakin himself. The advantage of the young, the pure, and the easily impressionable was how easy it was to condition them into what you wanted. And the thought of two Skywalkers burning with a mole-like zeal to live, serve and die at the slightest of Sidious whims was something he very much looked forward to. And if one chose to rebel? Well, it was of no great consequence. The advantage of twins was you always had a spare. Some hours later, Mustafar. Dooku knew who it was before answering the call. His master had foretold the Jedi's arrival and the Count was most looking forward to facing this particular adversary. Perhaps even more than fighting Yoda, a privilege Master Sidious would partake in himself shortly, no doubt. Standing tall, Dooku accepted the unknown transmission and could not help but smile as the image of Obi-Wan Kenobi from inside a starfighter came to life. Master Kenobi, it is a pleasure to see you once again. Master Dooku, Obi-Wan inclined his head with the mild tone he was so fond of. I see you've been expecting me. The Count infinitesimally raised an eyebrow at the title used for him but decided to not press the issue. Quite so, Jedi are so predictable after all. In fact, I am surprised you waited this long to strike in the first place. My apologies, we were all so riveted by Sidious' performance this afternoon it was difficult to stop watching. Do you see now, Obi-Wan? How far the Republic has fallen. How the rabble of the Senate frothed at the mouth like beggars waiting for the tiniest scrap of food. The Republic has fallen quite far, yes. Brought so low as to allow one such as Sidious into a position of leadership, though our own blame cannot be understated as well. Sidious' success is a testament to our own efforts as well. This time, Dooku couldn't help the faint flash of surprise from crossing his features. Obi-Wan Kenobi, the exemplar of the Order, criticizing it so? Promising. Forgive me if I'm mistaken, Dooku spoke pleasantly. But I have heard you dislike flying? Why don't you land, so that we may converse as proper gentlemen? I would be most grateful. No need to send me coordinates, I already know where everything is. Ending communication, Dooku deactivated the station's defense systems. Though it could most certainly deny Obi-Wan entry, he saw little need for it. Kenobi was a known performer of the impossible, almost as much as Skywalker, and would get in regardless. Besides, Dooku did not wish for him to perish, not in this way. Under the still high probability that they did cross swords, Dooku wished to indulge himself in such a contest. To see Obi-Wan's skills privately, with no Skywalker to interrupt them. If he was half as good as the Count perceived from their battle over Coruscant, then it was worth the time he'd spend. And if Kenobi was more amiable to Dooku's views this time around, well, why waste a potentially worthy ally? The Jedi Master landed forthwith in a standard Actis starfighter on the landing pad outside. Initial scans showed it lacked an astromech, no doubt its navigational computer automatically erased its own databanks. Dooku would learn nothing of Obi-Wan's departure point from there. Not an issue, there were always other means of persuasion. Standing in the center of the command section of the station, Dooku smiled pleasantly and observed Obi-Wan enter with the doors whooshing behind him. Even a minute outside in the heat had left him sweating. With the same mild interest, he observed the room first, taking in all of its details from the numerous tactical displays, control consoles, entrances, exits before settling on Dooku. Standing face to face, he continued to show nothing but mild interest, inwardly or outwardly, at being face to face with a Sith Lord. A victorious one at that. "May I interest you in a beverage?" Dooku asked, stepping aside and inclining his hand to the direction of a suite situated adjacent to the command center. "You look like you could use it." "That's quite all right," Kenobi waved the offer aside, casting away his larger robes onto the floor. He made no reach for his lightsaber. "There, all better already. Then let us dispense with the pleasantries and get to the heart of the matter." "Yes, let's," he said, still making no move toward his weapon. For the time being, neither did Dooku. "Master Dooku, I am here with an offer for you." "An offer?" Tyrannus ignored the master title again, instead of focusing on perceiving what Obi-Wan's intentions were. As ever, his presence in the Force was strong and pure. The same translucent being above Coruscant stood before him again. Nothing had changed? Not even the destruction wreaked upon the Jedi? Impressive in its misguided devotion, but secretly, Dooku hoped it was but a facade. After all, he had wished to recruit Obi-Wan on numerous occasions, even before their duel on Coruscant. Having Qui-Gon's old student at his side would make a great many things easier. "Indeed, per the guidance of the Force, I ask you, Master Dooku, to return to the Jedi and aid us in our time of need." The Count stared for a time before chuckling and ultimately laughing, loudly and quite in undignified fashion. Indeed, it had been years since a claim so outrageous had amused him so. Not since Ventress' foolish proclamation of being a Sith instead of a mere, embittered tool for him to use. If Obi-Wan had truly learned anything from recent events, he would have used Dooku's apparent guard lowering to strike him down and achieve victory. Instead, he merely stood there, arms hanging at his sides, and waited until the laughter died out. "Ah, Obi-Wan," Dooku let out a final chuckle. "I had hoped you'd become wiser, that you had learned something. My learning of something is what guided me here, to you with this offer." "The offer from the Force?" "Quite so," Obi-Wan inclined his head. "As Qui-Gon so often told me and the rest of the Council, it is the needs of the Force we Jedi should concern ourselves with. For we are, like all creatures, bound to it, and being so gifted with a greater connection must listen to its advice and always work in service to it. If we had done so, we might have been able to avert far more than the Clone Wars. Galidran, Naboo. All of these events may never have come to pass. Even Master Yoda has come to understand this." "What?" Dooku asked despite himself, curiosity piqued again. "Yoda, admitting failure? Admitting the error of his ways? I saw it myself, and while it was strange to witness, he was not altogether wrong. His realization of our faults is what allowed so many of us to survive, after all." "That would have been something to see," Dooku said, imagining the sight of despairing Yoda with some measure of enjoyment. "Unfortunately, it is still but a half measure. Had you or Yoda or the rest seen true reason, you would have embraced the power of the dark side already. You should have accepted your birth-given status as beings above others and moved to remove your enemy by any means necessary. If you had, you would have thrived, not merely survived." What a strange thing to say, advocating for the defeat of your own side. Obi-Wan's faint amusement sparked an eye to rise from Dooku. "At a glance, one might agree with your assessment. Yet I find it equally fitting and peculiar to hear from you. What are you blathering on about? You yourself stand as a testament to the very idea you suggested to us. A Jedi Master whose response to the legitimate failures of his government and order has embraced the idea of power at all costs to try and fix it. You have certainly lived up to it, and I cannot fathom how you can support them after everything that's happened. Tyrannus scowled but said nothing. Look at what you have wrought upon the galaxy by embracing the Sith ideals. War, destruction, millions dead, worlds razed to the ground. Order and security ensured, the corruption snuffed out, and the Jedi Order butchered in droves. Obi-Wan cut in with some force in his voice. Then he sighed. All of this has occurred in part from a single Jedi choosing to fall to the dark side. How can you possibly say the rest of us should have done the same? Can you not see what madness would come from it? Enough, Tyrannus sparked, cape pushed aside and arm moving to his lightsaber. I had hoped you'd learned, at last, the folly of the Jedi. Yet you've merely become conceited in another way. I tire of this meaningless banter. Defend yourself, Master Kenobi. So I will. He removed his weapon from its belt. But my mission remains clear, Master. I intend to save you because I can see you are not entirely lost. Not yet. Those who see things for what they truly are never lost, boy. The red blade came to life while a quick telekinetic suggestion prompted the doors and windows to shut down. There would be no daring escape from Mustafar. What happened next was to the death. Now, let us see if Skywalker was the reason you survived our last duel. That goes without saying, he answered with a calm smile and ignition of his saber. However, I will endeavor not to disappoint you this time, Master Dooku. Meanwhile, Gormo. Padme stared past the wall of their room, past the dreadnought's hull and past the very stars separating her husband from their family. Since saying goodbye to him, hopefully for the last time in this war, she decided to get some rest but couldn't. Her mind was awhirl with too many questions. Were her fellow members of the Loyalist Committee all right? Were they already arrested? Did Bail do the smart thing and vote for Palpatine to buy himself some time, or did he vote against and in so doing, placed a target on himself from a Sith Lord? She worried for Obi-Wan, far away and alone on a mission just as dangerous as Anakin's. To redeem a Sith Lord, the Jedi Masters she asked on the subject told conflicting stories. Stories of Jedi who'd fallen and came back, like one Darth Revan or Ulitz Keldroma. But there were others as well, Exar Kun, Darth Malak, who refused even to the bitter end. Padme hoped he succeeded, not just for all their sakes but for Anakin's as well. He would be inconsolable if something happened to Obi-Wan. Yet what Anakin thought or felt became impossible for her to discern. Not thanks to the distance between them but thanks to the dark side and the twins. He and Master Yoda vanished somewhere she assumed was Coruscant, disappearing behind a thick, black fog of chill which nearly suffocated them all. This time was different from the last. The connection between them was substantially weakened, in spite of what they all must have wanted. Parents and children alike. Did that mean Anakin was already in danger? Or did the dark side discover some means of blocking the tie binding them together? Was it because of the twins? Since Anakin left, they started feeling strange, different. In a way she could not put into words. They'd become more detached for some reason. Were they afraid too? No, she doubted that was it. The two of them, not even born, were so very brave already, fighting off the dark side years before they'd even know what it is. Hopefully, they'd never have to. With a smile, Padme rubbed her belly once again but stopped when she felt something wet just underneath the spot she was sitting. It was a puddle, getting bigger with each passing moment. Coming directly from her.